welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we are going to have our very first look at the Raspberry Pi 5. And I want to have a couple of initial comments about it, and then we'll get into the preparation, what we needed to do, and then we'll go ahead and have a look at the desktop I've built on this. Now, I've not done a lot of work on it yet. I just spent a few hours looking everything over, playing with all the different options and the settings, and building a system that I could look at day to day as I work on getting development done, as this is intended to replace my web development computer, which currently is a Raspberry Pi 4, which I have been using for a number of years. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. Thanks for checking out this video. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, if you like content like this, go ahead and do so. Check that you are still subscribed and go ahead and leave us a comment or a like down below. Well, today we want to talk a little bit about the Raspberry Pi 5. And first I want to just kind of talk a little bit about the build of it. This is the first Pi model that does not have a headphone jack, so be aware of that. I know I use the headphone jack on my Pis that are using my dreaded K-word box, but this one here, I wouldn't probably get a Pi for that particular purpose if I'm dependent on the hard wires. You can, of course, still use Bluetooth or HDMI to transfer your data. This one can run 4K 60 frames per second. I'm not sure if it can run dual monitor 4K 60 frames per second. I think one of them was limited in that, although that might have been the 4. Now, I purchased this from CanaKit, which is an excellent company. I purchased a lot of my Pi things from there. I have purchased from CanaKit. I have purchased from Vilras. I tried to purchase from Argon because I really like the Argon Neo 5 case, but they have a misconfiguration on their store and they will not accept my credit card because it uses a post office box as the legal mailing address. So I had to go with this one instead. I'm happy with the purchase here. I paid just about $100. This is a Raspberry Pi 5 8 GB. I put the active cooler in this guy, and then I picked up this case, which the active cooler is compatible with. Now, they do have a nicer, sleeker looking passive cooling case that is not compatible with the active cooler. So although I liked that case better in design, this one is a better function for what I need because this Pi is also overclocked. I went ahead and boosted up the overclocking on the Pi, although I haven't played with it a lot since I've done that, but I did boot it. Now let's talk about power. The Raspberry Pi 5 requires more power. I have seen people in the comments say, oh, you can just use the old Raspberry Pi cable. And I'm going to warn you against doing that. Well, some low-level stuff, you might be fine doing that. But if you do something that does call for higher power, you could actually damage the circuitry because the Raspberry Pi 4 and below used a maximum of 3 amps at 5 volts. This Pi uses a maximum of 5 amps at 5 volts, which means a little bit bigger power consumption. Now, in the real day-to-day, based on my experience monitoring power supplies, it's not going to be a significant amount on my draw. If you are unaware of this channel, I am a van dweller. This whole channel is done from my van studio. Everything I do relies on a 12-volt DC power source in my main cabin. And so what I needed to do is have a way to convert my 12-volt power source into our 5 volt at 5 amps because most of the devices you can get to do that conversion are only at 3 amps. But fortunately, the Orange Pis came out at a higher power level. The Pi 5s came out at a higher power level. And so we're starting to see some things on the market. So I ended up picking up this device here, which has an input of a 12 volt, which I have actually plugged in with these particular wires here. I could easily just use a standard, I think this is a 2.5 by 5.5 millimeter or something like that. I forget. I completely messed that up. But it's a very standard port that we have inside of these. Now I have a number of these ports inside of my van that I can just plug stuff into. In fact, I can also have these portable batteries, so I can plug this guy right in the front here, crank this guy on, and we have juice. There it is. You can see that real red light over there is indicating that there's power. So that's actually how I can do that. And then this is going to output the proper amount of voltage. And then our output goes into a standard USB port. Now, I also picked up a device that allows us to have directly plugging into the 12-volt system, and then allows me to just have a regular USB-C port on the outside. We also have that. We're going to go ahead and install that at a later time. Right now, we're just doing testing because I'm going to compare this Raspberry Pi in a future video to the Raspberry Pi 4 and see how does this stand up as a workstation. So what we did is first we got the Pi together, we attached the active cooler, dropped it inside the case. Very simple process. The active cooler just has a very nice peel off the back, stick it right on, and then there's some push pins that will attach itself in line so you can't mess that up. And then I went ahead and plugged this guy into the higher rated power source, and I ran the system. Now, as far as the operating system, there are a number of distros I can try. MX Linux has a brand new Pi version, and I believe they have a version for Pi. Manjaro probably has Pi 5 as well. And I've used Manjaro in the past. One of the challenges that I've had is the constant rolling software occasionally broke packages. So I wanted to go something more the Debian route. The reason I did not run Debian in the past on the Pi 4 is when I built that operating system a number of years ago, the Pi 4 did not have full support on everything I needed. Granted, I did not yet try audio on this guy. Video plays about as well as it does on the Raspberry Pi 4, although admittedly I haven't tested that in full detail either yet. We're going to do that in a future video. The purpose today is just to kind of show you what I did with building the desktop. So we are running Armbian, which has a Cinnamon desktop, but Cinnamon works on this guy perfectly fine. It does not work on a Pi 4 without using software rendering mode, which takes a ton of extra system resources, which means that I have a very snappy system with this guy out of the box. Now, we did have to fight with Armbian a little bit, and I'm going to tell you what those fights are when we get into the actual desktop, which we're going to go ahead and do that right now. So here we are starting up on System D here. This is Armbian running the Cinnamon desktop environment. So the flickering there you see temporarily there, that is my capture card, which I might be looking for recommendations for new capture card. This one on the Pi seems locked to the smaller screen resolution here. I would prefer to go with the higher one because I put in some nice desklets that you can actually see if I were to load this up at 1080p, but it's not allowing me to do that. Now we're using Slick Greeter here on Light DM, and there were some serious issues with this. I was getting that black screen issue that a lot of people have been talking about, and the fix seems to be the permissions. So I dropped this picture inside of a specific folder, set the permissions to 644, and that allowed me to run a picture on my Slick Greeter. I put my nice Debian logo down there to show off that we are running Debian. Of course, that's Armbian, but pretty close, right? And now we land on our desktop. It's not giving me the screen resolution that I would like, but we'll go ahead and run with this. What is missing is I put a calendar clock app and a CPU app up in the corner so you could see what the CPU looked like, but we're not actually able to see those right now, just as because of the screen resolution. If you have other recommendations on a new capture card, hey, maybe I might be in the market to get one. So I've not added a lot of stuff other than the software that I wanted to use. So we have added Evolution, I have Thunderbird, I have Firefox ESR, I also have Chromium on here, we have KeyPass XC, GIMP, I have a terminal application, and then of course we have FileZilla. You can see how my theming is set up here, and overall I think my theming is pretty good. It's pretty accurate. Like it's a good solid build. Now I was looking for something maybe a little bit more flashy, a little bit more transparent, maybe something with like neon colors. I couldn't find anything right away. If you know of a good Cinnamon theme, let me know. I'll give it a try. I would love to do that. Also, as far as the icons, I went with I think this is the paper icons. Not my favorite. The material design is not my favorite look, but these icons here, they were complete icon sets other than things like evolution. Everything else has its own icon for it. So I went with that for my overall fix. Now, there are some downsides on Armbian. That is that when you first start up Firefox, it wanted to always be showing the Armbian homepage every time you started it, and any amount of trying to change this either here or in About Config wasn't working. This is because there was a policy file set up that was forcing Firefox to use the same Armbian homepage. I appreciate the fact you want to show off your distribution, but please, if I choose to change the homepage on my Firefox, please let me do that, really. So I went ahead and did that, and that was in one of the files. I think I have all of my fixes over here. So here are the various things I needed to do. LightDM was causing an issue, as I said. So what I did is I dropped the image inside of User, Share, Images, and Desktop Base. And the reason I put it in that particular location is there were a few other images in that spot. And that is when I fixed my LightDM by making one little change, and then that is actually what we needed to do to get things working. But then that was able to show me what the issue happened to be. So let's go ahead and have a look at that particular directory. Of course, I need to put a leading slash on that guy. And let's do Share, Images, Desktop Base, and do an ls. And then you can see that there were a few different icons in here. Now, most of these, like Desktop Background and Default, these are symlinks going somewhere else. But there were a few other images in here, Login Background, and Desktop Grub, PNG. Those were able to be seen. I dropped the lightdm.jpg in here. And the problem that I initially had is I was getting the black screen because our permissions were not set right. So if you have a look, this here is what our permissions look like for that file, which is equivalent to 644. So I went ahead and changed those permissions to 644, and that actually allowed me to have a background on our LightDM login screen. On Firefox, there was over here in Etsy Firefox. So let's go to Etsy and Firefox ESR. Inside of here, there was a policy, .cgs, I think it is. There was a second file in here. That one there had some things that was locking the homepage being set to Armbian. So I just did a sudo remove that policy file, and that brought our Firefox ESR back to stock. And that allowed me to go ahead and have ESR or Firefox ESR exactly the way that I wanted to run that application. Additionally, we had a Microsoft repository on here because they installed VS Code by default. Now, there is VS Code Yum, which is the open source version of VS Code, but Armbian chose to install the Microsoft version instead and add a Microsoft repository to your repo list. So I don't want anything Microsoft on here. Well, I do want to play around with VS Code Yum a little bit, and I do have installed on another computer. This one is not the place for testing stuff like that. I have a separate computer for testing those. So I did remove VS Code and the Microsoft repository from the apt sources list. That is the next thing that I did. Of course, I installed Bluefish Editor, which is the editor that I use for doing this type of work, which of course I should add to my pile of stuff down here. So these are the various applications I would use. As far as my regular day-to-day work, I use basically these two web browsers, and they are used for two different purposes. So Firefox is my default web browser for just about everything, and I actually use LibreWolf as my firewall breakout. So if I go to facebook.com, for example, we can't load it up over there, but we can load up Facebook over here. This is because a few of my clients do require me to jump onto Facebook, Google Analytics, and things like that. And so having one web browser, but a privacy-focused web browser at that, to be my web browser that allows me to break out of my firewall to access other resources, allows me to do dedicated work for those, but keeping the majority of my browsing silent to Facebook and all of its demonic trackers. So that is how we have that all set up. Now, as far as the rest of our settings, most of the settings we had were pretty good. Now, there is, actually, I just discovered this last night, somewhere in here, there is actually an Armbian configuration file. And like I said, I looked all over the place, didn't see it anywhere. And then I saw this. I'm like, wait, where'd that come from? So you just need to enter your password here. And then this actually gives you a tool to do a lot of different things. So it's like, I kind of wish I knew about this. We can install to or update the bootloader. We can do some kernel upgrades or freezes. We can switch to a nightly build. We can do a low-level messages on console. Here's a boot environment. Here's, you can set the CPU speed and governor. Of course, I'm doing that in the boot file. We have our let's say AVHI was announced in the system network. Some of these I don't use on a regular basis. We can configure SSH. We can switch to other kernels. We can look at firmware updates, ZHS. You can disable the desktop or change the login type, and you can view some other information. We also have the ability to manage your network stuff. You can set your time zones, locales, and this one actually allows you to use Armbian. So if you're looking for a good build to allow you to do just some interesting, simple server stuff, this might be a good place to start because it is a fairly low resource Pi distro here. And then there is actually one that is a CLI only, which is going to be super lightweight. And if you have the same configuration tool here, this softy here allows you to convert your Pi into a number of different resources. So we can do a TV streaming server. We can do a OpenHAB smart home suite. Okay, so like Home Assist, we can set up a Nextcloud right over here. So you can look at our Nextcloud tutorials. Open Media Vault, this is my preferred. Plex Media Server, MB Server, probably don't want to mention that one on a Tubi video. TV, yeah, I don't want to mention that one either. Pi-hole, transmission for torrents. So you have a lot of different stuff, even ISP config, which I actually have an ISP config in production. We also have the ability to add and remove different software packages as well. Not a complete suite, but that is a nice configuration file. So inside of our settings here, I did have to add the LightDM settings panel, which allowed us to have the login window. This guy here allows you to make your configuration changes to your LightDM window. So this is actually where you can make all of those individual changes. Just make sure you have those images permissions set correctly. That is not installed by default, but I easily installed that through Synaptic Package Manager just by pulling that up and just searching for LightDM. Now there's a couple different LightDM greeters. So this one uses Slick, so I wanted to just kind of stick with that. So let's do LightDM, and then LightDM-settings. This is the configuration tool that allowed me to go ahead and add that. And then you'll see Slick Greeter is already installed by default. So I installed those to get that system up and ready. As far as my themes, I'm currently using the Yarrow Cinnamon Dark, which is the same theme available on the Linux, or excuse me, on the Ubuntu Cinnamon community flavor. So great job on that theme there. And we're using the same window decorations as well. Again, if anybody knows of a nice, maybe fluorescent or neon type with some transparency in it, I would love to see that. I just couldn't find one. Also, I looked at a number of different icon packs. I settled for, it's Papyrus I was using, not Paper. I installed them both. I couldn't remember which one I was using. I went ahead and and installed the Papyrus. Even though it's not my favorite, it does have more icons in it than anything else, and it did give my system a unified look. Not my favorite, but it does work. These cursors, I do really like these cursors. Again, I'm open to a neon pack if somebody knows of a good one. I have red glass and handhelds on here. They're not my thing, personally. So if you do know of a good cinnamon themes you want me to try out, go ahead and let me know about those as well. So as far as our system here, let's pull up our system monitor. They do have in many ways too many applications. There's like 3 separate system monitors that are installed on this already. So I'll probably want to take one of those off. But you can see right now how the Pi is performing. So you can see the CPUs are not doing a lot of heavy work. We're only using about just under 1 gig of memory out of the 8 available. And so you can see it's actually working out pretty well here. I have found just in my limited working with it that the system is fairly snappy, especially for being on a Raspberry Pi. And so my next step here is actually going to be doing some real work with this. I'm going to transfer a couple clients' work over here, do some work on it, and I'm going to go ahead and see how well it performs, and then do a comparative video. How does this compare to the Raspberry Pi 4 in the same general workflows? So there is my brief look and the tour of what my my version looks like. And this is Cinnamon. It's not the latest. It's not Cinnamon 5. It's it's not Cinnamon 6. It's Cinnamon 5. If I can type system right. Go ahead and get you the Cinnamon version here as well. I was a little bummed out, 568. A little bummed out that Cinnamon 6 just has a lot of really nice features to it. I wish it was that, but oh well, we're going to stick with this one for the time being. Maybe something else has a better version of Cinnamon out there. So there is my brief look at the Raspberry Pi 5. And stay tuned for a future video where we actually do some work on this and I talk about my experience with that. This image, by the way, this home background, this is one of the ones that I snapped on my journeys this summer. This is Mono Lake, California, and the login screen is from Sequoia National Park, also in California. Both of those from my journeys this summer. With that, guys, we'll jump on over and wrap up the video from here. So there is my look at the Raspberry Pi 5. In a future video, and we're going to give this one about 2 or so weeks, we are going to do a video comparing the Raspberry Pi 4 to the Raspberry Pi 5 so that you can get a chance to see what this system looks like, how does this compare, and could you do the type of work you might need to do on this. Now, obviously, YouTube videos, you would not do something like this. You would do something more like LibreElec or something more geared towards displaying video, which wouldn't be a problem, but running a full desktop environment for a system that you're going to check emails, browse the web, maybe do some programming work, this guy will work out great. And so I'm really looking forward to testing this out in the future videos. So with that, if you like this channel, if you're not already subscribed, please do that. Leave us a comment and a like, or hey, maybe a dislike in the comments down below. And let us know, what is your experience with the Pi? Are you looking forward to the Pis, or do you prefer other single board computers instead? Let me know that down in the comments also. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.